Good afternoon on today's Angry Alien Bulletin. Over here in the UK, a particular airline that has a bit of a nasty reputation is Ryanair. I myself have never had a problem flying this airline, but a lot of other people have expressed a lot of various complaints and frustrations with Ryanair, and it appears that aliens might not be terribly fond of them either. According to a Freedom of Information Act report that was made to Essex police, a Ryanair pilot spotted a UFO that passed within 60 meters of his plane while he was taking off from Stansted Airport in 2022. And he was traveling at about 370 kilometers per hour when this terrifying close encounter took place. And this is just one of a vast number of incidents that have taken place in the United Kingdom. And these incidents have been repeated all over the world over the last few years, ever since Arrow said that it was okay to start reporting these things. The question is, has this always been the case and commercial pilots have been afraid to speak up in the past? All of this and more coming at you on The Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to a special alien edition of The Angry Astronaut. So a lot of you may have heard of this particular incident, a close encounter with Ryanair. It appears that even aliens don't like Ryanair. It has kind of a nasty reputation for an airline, although I've never personally had a problem with them, by the way. I've flown with them several times, never had an issue, but enough about that. Apparently, according to a Freedom of Information Act report that was pulled from police documents, a close encounter took place over a British airport, actually, that involved a Ryanair flight that came dangerously close to an unidentified object. An object that might have been a drone, except it didn't set off the airport's drone detection equipment, which is very strange indeed. And what even got stranger is in the vicinity of this same airport, there was a couple of other sightings that involved multiple airliners who had their collision avoidance systems going off, as if there were vehicles very close by that were coming dangerously close to them. And yet, there was nothing visible. And that's just a couple of examples of a large number of aerial encounters that have been reported lately, some of them being captured on video. Now, I find some of these reports to be pretty suspect, and some of them may be things like weather balloons, etc., but nevertheless, it appears that these sorts of reports are becoming far more frequent than they used to. And I think this is being triggered not because of a sudden increase in extraterrestrial activity on our planet, but rather because the whole stigma of reporting these sorts of events is now being wiped away. Now, pilots everywhere are being encouraged to report these sorts of sightings, and this may have led them to haul out their camera phones and try to get some footage of these things as they pass them by. Once again, maybe these things might be balloons or something mundane, but a lot of this footage is pretty compelling, especially if you look at the velocity of the aircraft involved. And I have to admit, all of this is getting pretty fascinating and something that is both newsworthy and interesting to follow, regardless of what it might be. It's footage like this that got the Pentagon very interested in UAPs and what danger they might present to the U.S. military and to the public, because these things are behaving in a way that really can't be easily explained. This is not a Mylar balloon zooming by this Navy fighter jet. It is something entirely different, something that they were filming for a considerable period of time before suddenly it shot by the cockpit at a terrifying speed. And this is something completely inconsistent with most of the airborne clutter that Navy fighter pilots tend to run into. And in spite of all of the effort made over the last 3 years or so to find a mundane explanation for pieces of footage like that, the military has been unable to do so. Now, I'm showing you this particular piece of test footage of a vehicle that has nothing to do with UAPs, but rather a re-entry vehicle designed to bring samples back down to Earth to give you an idea of what these sorts of things look like when they're hanging up in the atmosphere where they might be observed by aircraft. As you can see, there's a little bit of motion involved here. However, this is a parachute, not a balloon, but also you can see that the vehicle hanging from it spins around a bit in the wind. It's kind of easy to tell the difference between something like this and a lot of the UAP footage that we've seen submitted by commercial airline pilots as of late, and also by some private aircraft operators. Here's another one of the more compelling pieces of footage that I've seen. Once again, apparently the pilot is observing something that's either hovering or keeping pace with his aircraft, something along those lines, until all of a sudden it changes course and blows by his aircraft at a tremendous speed. This is completely inconsistent with any sort of Mylar balloon. A sudden change in velocity and trajectory is completely inconsistent with what a balloon can do, obviously. Might be a drone. However, the shape of the vehicle is also very inconsistent with what we usually see from drones, and drones also are incapable of these kinds of velocities, at least the apparent velocity that the vehicle seems to be traveling at when it passes the aircraft. Again, these things can be very deceptive. The speed of the aircraft needs to be taken into account, and given the fact that this was a private video, not shot by the military, not confirmed by radar or IR sensors or anything else, it's a lot more difficult to establish any sort of credibility or any sort of validity to this type of footage. I'm going to show you some more footage here in a little bit, but let's talk about the Ryanair incident. Again, this came from a Freedom of Information request submitted to Essex Police by NewsQuest's AI team, some sort of organization that looks into these sorts of incidents. I really don't know a whole lot about NewsQuest, but in any event, according to the transcript, this UFO, quote, passed within 20 meters of their aircraft. Let's go ahead and read the entire transcript. It says, quote, a Ryanair airplane was climbing out from Stansted Airport and was at a height of 4,000 feet and just over the St. Elizabeth Centre. By the way, this is fairly close to London. The pilot saw an object which they describe as black, which passed within 20 meters of the aircraft. In another incident at this same airport in 2022, several pilots reported that their collision avoidance systems were detecting an object as near as 500 feet beneath their aircraft, an object that they couldn't see. Now, Nick Pope, who ran the British government's UFO program in the 1990s, said this about the incident, quote, these fascinating revelations illustrate that whatever one thinks about UFOs, there's a credible and serious flight safety issue involved. When an object passes within 20 meters of an aircraft, this is a very close call by anyone's definition. This and other incidents revealed in this Freedom of Information response shows that it was a mistake for the Ministry of Defense to terminate their UFO investigation program at the end of 2009 and suggests that it's time to reverse this policy. Even if people are skeptical and think that this is all just drone activity, it should be borne in mind that while drones can be flown as a hobby or by surveyors, they can also be used in espionage and terrorism. Now, there are a number of other incidents that took place in the same region between 2018 and 2022, including a family that claimed to have seen a ball of faded light going in and out of the clouds over Basildon in 2018, describing its position as above the clouds, but it isn't. By the way, this footage is not taken from that particular incident, but from another incident from a Ryanair flight that was on its way to Poland, incidentally. All kinds of weird things happening with Ryanair flights, but this particular UFO in Basildon was seen in 2019, a high-pitched noise being heard before it, and then the UFO being seen about 300 feet up in the air for about 14 minutes. Once again, I find this particular report to be highly suspect. In a world where everyone has a camera phone in their pocket, why did no one shoot any footage of this UFO if it was sitting up there for 14 minutes? In addition to that, another resident reported seeing a very large, square-sized object about the size of 4 helicopters. Now, this bears some resemblance to an incident that took place in California that involved a huge red square UFO. But once again, why no footage when everyone carries a camera in their pocket? Now, this particular footage that you're looking at right now, this is some of the most interesting that I've come across when we're talking about footage that was taken outside of the United States. It was also found, by the way, as a result of a Freedom of Information Act request. The footage was captured by the thermal camera on a police helicopter over the Bristol Channel close to Wales. It shows the object moving against the wind, and it appears to travel at high speed and was tracked by the helicopter's thermal camera, whereas it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. That's a spooky thing indeed. After a protracted battle, by the way, to get his questions answered, this UFO investigator Gary Heseltine, who used to be a police officer, by the way, he got the UK government to come clean with what it knows about UFOs. Well, this UFO anyway. The object was flying at an altitude of about 1,000 feet, and as I said before, was only visible when the police noticed it on the thermal camera that they were said to have been testing by pointing it at planes heading towards the Cardiff airport. The encounter lasted for about 8 minutes, and you can see the camera changing settings as the police try to identify the strange phenomena. The police also said in a 2019 tweet, apparently more than 3 years after they released this clip, that a drone is possible, but they were unable to keep up with the aircraft, so it would have had to have been a very fast drone indeed to outrun a police helicopter. Mr. Heseltine also tried to obtain the audio recordings from inside the police chopper along with a map of the object's movements, but they would not be released under the FOI request. Quote, "This is a verified police helicopter footage showing an object not seen with the naked eye, but clearly seen in the infrared spectrum. It is moving against the wind, so it's not a balloon, nor is it emitting any heat signature indicating a propulsion system." Now, before I show you the rest of the footage that I've been able to dig up, I would like to thank Mark Fluke and also Wes Clark, my latest Patreon supporters. Thank you very much. Trying to claw my way to that 1% subscriber to Patreon ratio, which will change everything for my channel. And like I say, you get early release content, exclusive content, and also, this is a dubious advantage at best, I think, but an opportunity to speak to me directly on my Discord server. Every Sunday, I go online to talk to my supporters early on that particular server, and you guys, if you're members of the Discord server, can absolutely participate. It's not restricted to anybody. If you want to jump in and ask questions about the channel, make suggestions, whatever, all the details in the description. So let's have a look at a little bit of footage that I'm not as convinced by. For example, this one. Even though this looks very similar to the footage we were looking at before, where we have a small, either spherical object or perhaps a little bit like a saucer-shaped object rapidly passing an aircraft, this instead looks like a hovering balloon that's being passed at a more considerable distance and is maintaining a very steady location. It's not actually in motion, it's the motion of the aircraft aircraft that we're seeing. Although I must confess, the shape of this object is very strange indeed. By the way, I think a lot of this footage was taken by Colombian aircraft or somewhere in South America. Don't know about all the details, but I do know that none of this footage was taken by American aircraft. So there's another object, again, passing by at a more slow and conservative speed, although I have to admit, that looks a little strange there for a moment. It's almost as if the object decelerates for a moment as the aircraft is passing. And by the way, the pilot was kind enough to show us his altitude and airspeed velocity, although that's a bit suspect as well. Why would he have shown us all that information if he wasn't really close to the object? Now, clearly, all of this is just slowed down. Still, very interesting footage, and the shape of the object is very odd indeed. Now, by the way, one of the reasons that I decided to focus on non-US UAP incidents is because a lot of comments have been made about how nearly all UFO encounters happen in the United States, which is where all the UFO nuts are, and why would aliens be interested in the US only, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw that there is a great deal of interest in UAPs all over the world, not just in the United States. So let's have a quick look at perhaps the most infamous UFO sighting in UK history, the legendary Calvine UFO sighting. A lot of you have probably seen this photograph. What you may not know, though, is that this photo was taken way back in 1990, over 30 years ago. It was titled The Calvine Photograph. The negatives were handed over to Scotland's Daily Record newspaper. Those were in turn sent to the Ministry of Defense. Now nobody knows where they are. According to reports, the photograph was captured on the 4th of August, 1990, around 35 miles northwest of Perth, close to Calvine. The hikers who spotted the flying object have remained unknown to this day. The image, as you can see, shows a huge diamond-shaped object hovering in the sky with a smaller plane of some kind flying behind it. It's difficult to tell, of course, how big this object actually is, how close the plane is. Perspective is always very, very misleading in these kinds of photographs. But according to eyewitness accounts, the UFO hovered in the air for a duration of 10 minutes before shooting upward and disappearing. It was estimated to be about 30 meters in length. Academic journalist Dr. David Clark has now uncovered the photo after decades of research, finding a copy in the possession of former RAF press officer Craig Lindsay. Given the fact that we know very little information about this case, like the identity of the hikers who took the photograph, this incident is beyond mysterious. Perhaps the most mysterious UFO case on record, at least in the United Kingdom. And of course, one of the most compelling details about it is the fact that this vehicle, at least on the surface, appears to resemble the giant red square UFO that was spotted almost 15 years later off the coast of California. Very interesting stuff indeed. I hope you guys have enjoyed this content today. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, please subscribe. Also, please keep in mind that I've got this fantastic Oumuamua image in a variety of different merch in my store, and all of that is tagged in this video. Just go ahead and click on the tags. It'll take you straight to the merch and you can check it out. And by the way, I'm offering a 10% discount to everyone right now until the end of March, and the code that you use is MUA10, MUA10, to get a 10% discount on some merch featuring this amazing artwork and unique depiction of the Oumuamua object as it moved through our solar system back in 2017. Thanks again for watching, and as always, stay angry about space.